Chapter 242. Their goal. With a series of screams, the three of them woke up again. Seeing Gu Qingrui standing before him, the person on the right immediately shouted, "Well talk, well talk. Please hurry up and take out the thing in my wound." The other two neither refuted nor spoke up. Seeing their attitude soften, Gu Qingrui pointed at the half-segmented worm on the ground and said, "I've already cleaned up your wound, but there's only half a dead worm left. A rat must have chewed off the rest." He yawned and leaned against the 8-seater table. "You guys better answer my question. I'm tired and don't have the energy to waste." The three were overjoyed when they heard that the wound had been treated. They quickly looked down and saw that the wound had indeed cleaned up. However, there was no medicine or dressing for their injuries. "Why didn't you bandage our wounds?" the man in the middle immediately asked. "You guys haven't answered my question. I've already done my best to treat your wounds." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he turned around and started to pack up his first aid kit. "Well talk. We're indeed following the orders of Yanling County's mayor to incite refugees to come to Yunhe County," the man on the right immediately said. Gu Qingrui nodded and looked at the other two. "We are the subordinates of Miss Zhao, the wife of Lord Qin. We are here to avenge the Lin family's second housekeeper, Lin Donglin." The person on the left quickly replied. The middleman listened to the two's answers and secretly cursed them for being so impetuous. They left the most important question for him to answer. He opened his mouth but didn't dare say anything. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui smiled and ignored him. Instead, he cleaned the other two people's wounds, applied some medicine, and bandaged them. He took his first aid box and turned to leave. The middleman's heart trembled when he saw this. He immediately recalled the heart-wrenching feeling of being bitten by rats. He was the only one who had his wounds unbandaged. When the rats return, he will be the first to be bitten. Thinking of this, he quickly shouted, "Other than bringing the victims here to take revenge on County Mayor Kong, we're also here to take revenge on the former Madam, Gu Zi. We found out that you were the one who helped Gu Zi escape danger last time. That's why you set your sights on the manor. Revenge on Gu Zi. How?" Gu Qingrui turned his head and asked. At the same time, the way he looked at the man was like a knife that pierced straight into his heart. The middleman was frightened. He gulped and stammered, destroy her innocence. It's best to force her to commit suicide. Your family's new madam is simply shameless, the world's most despicable person." Gu Qingrui said this through gritted teeth. The three wanted to retort, but they didn't dare to do so. However, he also knew that Zhao Xiuying had gone too far. She had taken someone else's dowry, driven them away, and even tried to kill them. However, they were only servants. Whether their master was right or wrong, they just had to follow orders. Gu Qingrui didn't make things difficult for them. Instead, he asked, "How many people were sent out this time? Where are the rest?" The three looked at each other, and the middleman answered, "A total of 6 people. However, we split up after reaching Yunhe County, so we don't know where they are. But we agreed that we would meet at warehouse number 3 at the dock tomorrow afternoon." Tomorrow afternoon, warehouse number 3. Gu Qingrui repeated and noted it down. He then asked, "What about the exact time?" "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 243. Hospitality. No, the warehouse is occupied by refugees now. We'll find each other if we go to the right place," the man in the middle said, shaking his head. "Okay, I'll believe you this time, but you'd better not lie to me. Otherwise, don't blame me for making things difficult for you." After Gu Qingrui was done, he asked for the names and characteristics of the other 3 people before he bandaged his wound and walked out. He also asked the guards to prepare some food for them. The next morning, Gu Qingrui found Qian Zhuang and Gu Erjiang and asked them to find a few more people to keep an eye on the 3 people as described. If those 3 arrive, they must keep a close eye on them. In the afternoon, the new constable, Zhang Darren, brought a few bailiffs and rushed to the clinic. Gu Qingrui saw them coming in and immediately came up to them. "Welcome, Constable Zhang. I'm sorry for not coming out to welcome you, Dr. Gu, you're too polite. We're here on Lord Bei's orders to bring those people back." "I see. Would you all like a cup of tea in the backyard?" "No need. Let's get to business, as we must rush back tonight." "All right, let's talk while we walk." Gu Qingrui led them to the manor after he finished speaking. On the way, he told Constable Zhang the confessions of the 3 men. He also told him about the 3 other people who were part of them, inciting the refugees to come here. "There are 3 more people?" Constable Zhang's head hurt when he heard this. If they wanted to capture those other 3, they wouldn't be able to return today. Gu Qingrui saw him in a difficult spot and said, "Brother Zhang, if you have an emergency, you can bring these men back directly. 111 catch them tonight and send them over. If you're not busy, you can rest in the manor for the night. It's not too late to set off tomorrow morning." Constable Zhang hesitated for a moment, then looked at the others and said, "Brothers, what do you think?" "Sir, let's stay for one night. We've been running for days with our sore feet." Someone immediately said, "That's right. We just have to get back before tomorrow ends. One really can't walk anymore today." "All right, well, go back tomorrow." Constable Zhang hesitated for a moment and finally agreed. "Lovely, I'll make the arrangements for tonight. Everyone, do have a good sleep before setting off tomorrow morning." Gu Qingrui smiled and nodded. Since they weren't in a hurry to return, Gu Qingrui wasn't in a hurry to bring them to the manor either. Hence, he brought them to the Grassland Taste restaurant. After arranging for everyone to go to a private room upstairs, he said, "Have some tea and take a break. 111 arrange for your meals. By the way, is there anything you guys don't eat?" "No, but it's quite hot today. We would like to have something refreshing," Constable Zhang said. "All right, please wait a moment. 111 be right back." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he turned around and went to the kitchen. "So, are we eating here tonight or going to the manor?" Zhou Ying asked after receiving the news. "The manor. One won't need to go back and forth that way, but one won't be able to come back tonight," Gu Qingrui said. "All right, just take care of yourself. It's not peaceful now, so don't drink too much." "I know. 111 go up first." Gu Qingrui nodded, took 2 dessert plates and snacks, and went upstairs. Zhou Ying began to prepare the dishes. Since they requested something light and refreshing, Zhou Ying served 9 braised lamb feet, a plate of honey-flavored kidney beans, a plate of peanuts, and a plate of pig skin jelly. Afterwards, she told Li Xing to stir-fry a plate of black-peppered beef, twice-cooked pork, and a plate of prawns while she prepared cold mixed white sweet potato vines, lettuce, cucumber, and some bean paste mixed together. She also personally roasted 5 lamb legs and prepared a bowl of sour plum soup. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 244 Recruitment 1. Gu Qingrui accompanied them to have a good meal. After the meal, Zhou Ying even served them a plate of cherries. Once the group of people finished eating, they enjoyed a cup of tea in the restaurant. When Qian Zhuang came to deliver the news, the group went downstairs and headed straight to the dock. After capturing the 3 men, Qian Zhuang and his brothers returned to the manor. In the evening, Gu Qingrui arranged for a whole roast lamb with some wine and food. After the bailiffs were stuffed, they washed up and went to bed. The next morning, Uncle Nien made mutton giblet soup with pancakes, and the group of bailiffs had a great time all around. This was the first time they had received such great care in a long time. Therefore, all of them were especially friendly to Gu Qingrui, while the 6 captured men were treated more miserably. They were taken away without even having a meal. The real refugees were handed over to the village constable Tian Jingzhong, who taught them a good lesson. If they violated the rules again, they would be executed without question. After sending everyone off, Gu Qingrui finally heaved a sigh of relief. He picked up his wallet and was about to pay for Qian Zhuang's group of brothers. Li Si quickly stopped him. Dr. Gu, we don't want the money this time. We want to work for you like Brother Qian and the others. Yes, Dr. Gu, please take us in. We will listen to your orders and never disobey them. We won't chase after chickens if you tell us to catch dogs. Ma Zi, who had become familiar with them, chimed in at this time. When Qian Zhuang heard this, he gave him a slap and said, choice of words, come on. Why would you compare what we do to chasing dogs or catching chickens? Can't you change the way you talk? Ha, I'm just a ruffian who doesn't know how to talk. I was just expressing my loyalty. Ma Zi said with a smile, then looked at Gu Qingrui with anticipation. Seeing this, the others immediately followed suit and expressed their loyalty. Some even knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Life was getting harder recently, not to mention that these were hooligans who couldn't do proper work. They would starve to death sooner or later if they did not find a way out. This was why they were all sincere about working under Gu Qingrui. Qian Zhuang and Gu Erjiang looked at Gu Qingrui. Dr. Gu, if you can take them in, it would be for the best. Although we're gangsters, we've never done anything harmful. And I promise they'll definitely change their bad habits and work hard. Right, right. If you are hesitant about it, you can also test us first, like you tested Brother Qian. If you're sure we are of use to you, only take us in. Otherwise, we won't bother you any further, Li Si said. Gu Qingrui saw their sincerity and pondered for a moment before saying, get up, all of you. I'm very touched that you want to follow and acknowledge me, and I can indeed take you all in. But you have to change your old habits. If you do anything underhanded again, I won't be soft-hearted when I deal with you. I think you know this. Yes, yes. If anyone commits a crime, you don't have to do anything. We'll deal with them ourselves. Li Si nodded. They were all present when Gu Qingrui dealt with Lin Dong, and they knew his skills better than anyone else. This was one of the reasons why they had chosen to follow him. If they followed a powerful master with solid connections, they would be able to rise in social class in the future. Besides, the young couple were usually kind and generous people. Yes, we will not allow a bad apple to spoil the bunch. Gu Erjiang chimed in. How about this? You'll all have a 1-month trial. If your performance is decent after this month, it'll take you in as long-term workers. Alright, 1 month it is. Li Si said. Then what will they be doing? Are they going to collect ingredients with us? Qian Zhuang asked. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 245 Recruiting 2. No, you two will still be doing that on your own. They will stay in the village and protect the crops, cattle, and sheep with the people in the village. Of course, during the day, they can gather some information, especially news about the refugees, in case the village is attacked again. Gu Qingrui shook his head. Thank you for your trust, Dr. Gu. Leave this matter to us. The 8 of us will definitely do our best to protect the manor. Li Si said. It's a deal then. Go home and tell your families today. After that, pack up some clothes and bedding and move to the outer courtyard of the manor. As for how you're going to split the living quarters, you can discuss it among yourselves. There's also the monthly salary during your trial period, 3 meals per day and 300 coppers per month. Once you all pass the trial period, it'll be 500 coppers. Dr. Gu, can we move over too? That way, we won't have to cook too. Qian Zhuang asked with a pleading smile. Yes, yes. We're going hungry these days, it's been hard. Gu Erjiang quickly echoed. Sure, as long as you are willing to stay, anything is fine. Gu Qingrui replied. After sending the group off, he found Chang Shun and asked him to make arrangements. He also asked a woman who cooked to prepare 3 meals daily for the group. Master, they're all gangsters. Are you really going to take them in? Chang Shun asked with an unwilling expression. They were people that everyone usually avoided, so why did Gu Qingrui still invite them into the manor? If they had any bad intentions, it would be troublesome. Furthermore, the villagers were attempting to save as much food as possible this year. Many people had been fired from their long-term jobs, but Gu Qingrui instead recruited a group. This meant a lot of extra food expenses daily. He did not hide anything and told him his worries. Gu Qingrui patted his shoulder and said, Uncle Chang, have you ever heard of the saying that when the water is too clear, this means there aren't any fish? As long as we make good use of them and benefit ourselves, we don't have to care about their identities. Although Chang Shun felt a little conflicted after hearing that, he knew Gu Qingrui was determined to take those people in, so he didn't say anything more. But at night, his initial impression was overturned. Because Li Si and the others checked all the traps, they gave him a lot of helpful advice. Saying that the defense of their village was impregnable might be exaggerated, but there definitely weren't any more loopholes after improving based on Li Si's advice. Furthermore, the men were well versed in gossip and information, particularly Ma Zi. He even divided the refugees into several groups and asked which village they were from, inquiring clearly about who had conflicts with whom. Gradually, Chang Shun let go of the prejudice in his heart, but he didn't let down his guard in case a thief was among them. On the other end, after Gu Qingrui returned to town, he went straight to the restaurant and sent the best young beggar who was well versed in martial arts, Jinya, to the manor. He asked that he take some time in the morning to teach the manor's long-term employees some self-defense martial arts. Turning to Constable Zhang, after he had sent the 6 men to jail, he handed over the confessions of the 6 men to Mayor Kong. My lord, should we go to the southwest to stop the refugees from coming over? I'm afraid that if this continues, we won't be able to take it. Do you think we can stop the refugees? I've already reported this to the government. Let's see how they reply. At this point, Mayor Kong thought of the plummeting water level and continued, however, you can spread the news that most of the wells in Yunhe County have dried up. Constable Zhang paused for a moment before he smiled. I understand. I'll make the arrangements. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 246 Getting Married. 1. Remember not to make the same mistake as the Zhao family. However, it's true that the water in our well is rapidly running out. Mayor Kong looked at the confession in his hand and reminded. I understand, sir. You can rest assured. Constable Zhang thought for a moment before he nodded and ran out. In the blink of an eye, the day of Gu Ziqia's wedding arrived. After Zhou and Gu Qingrui got up, they brought 2 sets of fine cotton cloth and a tael of silver to their old house. The 2 parted ways after they entered, with Gu Qingrui taking the tael of silver to hand over as a monetary gift. Zhou took the cloth to Gu Ziqia's room. Inside the room, Gu Zishan and her sisters were talking to Gu Ziqiu. Gu Ziqiu was dressed in red and was sitting cross-legged on the bed after washing up. Ziqiu, you look beautiful today, Zhou said with a smile. She then handed the bundle of cloth to her and said, "This is your wedding gift. I wish you a happy marriage and that you will have a child soon." "Thank you, third sister-in-law," Guzichio said as she accepted the cloth. "Third sister-in-law, please take a seat," she said, motioning to a stool at the side. "You sisters should talk. There aren't many people today, so I have to go outside to see if I can help with anything." After Zhouing finished speaking, she turned around and walked out. They weren't particularly familiar with each other, so there wasn't much to talk about. She just prepared an extra gift for her because they were blood-related. Otherwise, she really didn't want to give her anything. After that, she saw Mrs. Sun preparing a dried fruit plate and immediately went to help. "Oh, you are here. Come on, don't busy yourself when it's all family here. Come and chat with us." Sixth Aunt Gu saw her coming in with a dried fruit plate and waved her over. "That's right, Ing. Come and help me take care of your other aunts. Leave the rest to your second aunt and the others." Madame Chiao echoed. Seeing this, Zhouing smiled and placed the plate of dried fruit in front of them. "You're all elders. Is it appropriate for me to sit here?" "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" "We also want to ask you something," said Sixth Aunt Gu. "Oh, what do you want to know?" Zhouing sat down and asked. "I heard that the town's well is running out of water. Is that true?" When the others heard this, they perked up their ears. This would affect their future lives, so they had to take it seriously. "Indeed, the well in our restaurant is the deepest in town, with 30 meters underground, but there's not much water left. It's even worse for the public wells. It's considered decent if they can produce 10 buckets of water a night." Zhouing nodded. "This serious? It seems that this is all because of the refugees. Without water in the town, our village will be in danger." Mrs. Bai expressed her concern as she grabbed a small handful of melon seeds. "That's true. We're at the foot of the mountain, so there's more water. They'll definitely come for our place soon." Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. "It looks like we have to discuss this in detail. Otherwise, if they really enter the village, all the crops we've planted will be in vain." Sixth Aunt Gu said. "Speaking of crops, how is the wheat in our village? How many pounds can we produce per acre?" Zhouing asked. "Don't mention it. When the wheat bloomed previously, there were a lot of worms. When we want to fertilize it, we lack water. It's good enough that the crow's didn't collapse." Mrs. Bai sighed. "Indeed, for this year's harvest, having 30 to 40 pounds per acre is already considered good. On the other hand, the sweet potatoes you gave us to plant are drought-resistant and growing well. We can even eat the leaves of those plants." Sixth Aunt Gu added. "Then let's put in more effort to water those potatoes. Who knows, sweet potatoes might end up becoming our life-saving food." Zhouing said. "Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much." Chapter 247 Getting Married, 2, That's True. The only things that we can water now are the sweet potatoes and our vegetable fields. Mrs. Bai concluded. The others weren't happy after hearing this. They fell silent because they all knew how bad their situation was. With the water level in their well, they didn't know how many more times they could water their crops. If they couldn't hold on until the day of harvest, their coming would be harrowing. Just as everyone was silent, Mrs. Wang, Guzi, Mrs. Fang, and her son came in. "Hey, what's going on? Why are all of you just sitting there and not saying anything? We were just talking about the crops in our fields and aren't optimistic about them. Do take a seat." Zhouing explained and got up to give her the stool. After greeting Guzi and the mother and son, she asked, "Big sister, where are the 2 children? Why didn't you bring them?" "Qingxi took them to play. I'll be back in a while. Guzi replied with a smile. Zhou picked up the teapot and was about to pour a cup of tea for them when she found that the pot was empty. You guys continue chatting while I get some more tea. After she said that, she took the teapot and walked out. The others surrounded Guzi and asked about her life in town. Seeing this, Mrs. Fong took the opportunity to find Gu Ziqiu and give her a gift. When Zhou Ying returned with her teapot, the groom drove a carriage to pick up the bride. Gu Qingxi immediately brought a group of youngsters to greet them, asking for some red packets and candies before letting them in. After that, Gu Zishan and the rest stopped the groom from getting in again at the entrance to the house. After receiving some red packets, they only let the groom in. Gu Qingxi went in and carried Gu Ziqiu out of the boudoir. After the newlywed couple went to the living room to pay their respects to the bride's parents, they set off. As soon as the carriage left, Second Aunt Gu took a water basin and went out, crying. She splashed it at the door and stood there, staring at the carriage with tears flowing down her face. It really fits that saying, a married girl is like water that has been poured out. Zhou Ying said it with emotion. That's right, that's why we women have a hard life. No matter how good your maternal family is, once you get married, you're an outsider. The in-laws still treat you as an outsider before you become the head of the family. Mrs. Guo spoke at this moment. Zhou Ying was stunned after hearing that and continued, this is why women should be self-reliant. We shouldn't rely on others. With Mrs. Liu's personality, if her daughter Gu Ziki could not marry into a prominent family in the future, she would not care about her after that. This meant she had to rely on herself. As for whether Gu Ziki could understand her hint, she didn't care about that. Afterwards, Zhou Ying turned around and called everyone back into the house. When the banquet started at noon, because Gu Qingji, his wife, and Gu Qingye had gone to send off the bride, Gu Qingrui had to accompany Father Gu and second Uncle Gu to entertain the guests and give toasts to everyone. After a round of drinking and when everyone was almost done eating, the three finally returned. They quickly ate a few mouthfuls because they still had to see the guests off later. When it was time to send off the guests, the patriarch pulled Gu Qingrui aside and said, "You can sit down now since your two elder brothers will be able to handle the small number of guests now." Exactly. Take a seat, and let's discuss something. The village chief agreed. Gu Qingrui had no choice but to sit down when he heard he had something to discuss. What is it about? I heard that many people have started to escape to the south. What do you think our village should do? Should we leave after the summer harvest? The village chief asked directly. Yeah, I'm afraid the well water in the village won't last long. The patriarch nodded. I personally think that we shouldn't leave if possible. The most important thing is that our village is not yet at the end of its rope. Take the ring of mountains behind us, for example. Do you think there's no water or food in it? With the harvest from the fields, we can still hold on for another year. A year's time should be enough for the weather to recover. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 248 Finding Water Sources 1. But there are also many refugees. When we are really at the end of our rope, the resources in our village aren't even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. The village chief spoke with a worried expression. Then, if we go out to seek refuge, can you guarantee that we won't be robbed on the way? Gu Qingrui asked in return. As far as I know, the entire north suffers from a drought, so the only place we can escape is to the south. But how are we going to live there without land and houses? Do we really have to abandon our family business here? If we are planning to come back after this drought, I don't think it's necessary to go through so much trouble since it's so far away. Therefore, I think the most urgent thing is to quickly go up the mountain and find the nearest water source. If we find a water source, we can survive even if there is no water in the well. Water source. The village chief's eyes lit up when he heard that, but he smiled bitterly. Most of the water sources are deep in the mountains. Even if we find one, it's not easy to transport it out. By the way, is the river source in our village far away? Although it doesn't flow anymore, maybe there is still water at the source. I know where it is. It's not far, but it's high up. Unless the water flows down naturally, it isn't practical to go up and reach it. The patriarch replied. There are always more ways to solve a problem. Besides, no matter how difficult it is, it's still better than running away from here. How deep is the well in our village? Gu Qingrui asked. The well at the village entrance is 5 feet deep, and the one at the foot of the mountain is 3 feet deep. Why? The village chief asked. Could it be you want to dig a well? But if there's no water in one, wouldn't it be useless to dig more? Do you really think so? If we dig deeper to 10 or even 20 feet, there would definitely be water. Gu Qingrui reminded them. The village head and the patriarch looked at each other as their eyes lit up. They didn't know if this would work in other places, but their village was at the foot of a mountain, so they had more water than in other areas. If they wanted to dig a deeper well, they could try it. As for the funds needed, this was something the two clans could provide. The only thing the villagers had to do was dig it. Then it's decided. We'll find someone to try to dig a well. If it really doesn't work, then we'll talk about fleeing here. The village chief made a decision. Yeah. Honestly, I'm scared to even think of fleeing here. The patriarch nodded in agreement. Take the opportunity to set up some traps near the village. Otherwise, our village will become a target for everyone because of our water and food. Alright, this matter must be arranged, too, as it isn't safe to rely on the patrol team. The village chief nodded in agreement. After that, the three men went out and wandered around the village to find the location of a water source. At this time, Gu Qingrui discovered that the water measurement here relied on mugwort as a guide. There was no scientific basis for it. Regardless, he still managed to lock onto 3 possible water sources before the sky turned dark. In the evening, when they returned home, Gu Qingrui asked, Babe, can you go to the interspace and look for the 2 water meters we kept there? Let's try it out in the village at night and see if we can find some underground water source. Why? Is the village going to dig up more wells? Shou Ying asked in surprise. Gu Qingrui nodded and told her about the village chief and the patriarch's request. That's why we have to try. If we manage to dig a well, we'll be benefiting the people. Alright. You keep an eye on things while I look for the equipment. After Shou Ying finished speaking, she went to the west room and entered her interspace. She rummaged through the warehouse, and there were indeed 2 water measuring devices. According to the instructions, they could measure up to 300 meters, more than 1,000 feet deep. She placed it in the villa, then took a small watermelon that weighed about 4 to 5 pounds out of her interspace. After the 2 of them finished eating the watermelons, they rested on their beds for a while. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 249 Finding Water Sources. 2. After dinner, the couple studied the water meter carefully. When it was quiet outside, they set off with their devices. First, they measured the 3 water sources the village chief and the others had found and didn't expect they would really find one with water in it. It was in a barren land not far from their house, but at the moment, it seemed that they had to dig 50 feet to reach the water. Luckily, the water inside was abundant. If they could dig deeper, at least the problem of water supply for the villagers would be solved. Are we still going to look for more? Shou Ying asked. Let's try again along this line. Our village will be in a good position if we get 2 more water sources. Gu Qingrui followed the water meter's instructions and went over them. Finally, they found another place by the river, not far from the village entrance. The water here was in even larger volumes, as if it were connected to the underground river. "Who is it?" At that moment, a loud shout was heard, and a few figures quickly ran over. They quickly removed the water meter and placed it in the interspace. They then took out 2 bamboo sticks and inserted them into the hole where the water measuring device was. "It's me, Gu Qingrui." Gu Qingrui stood up. "Dr. Gu, why are you here? What are you doing?" Qian Shisan, the leader, immediately went forward and asked enthusiastically. "Oh, 13 uncle. The village is going to dig a well. Since it's hot and I can't sleep, I came out to try and look around." Gu Qingrui pointed at the 2 bamboo poles. "I didn't expect Dr. Gu to have such a skill. I just learned it from the village chief and my uncle in the afternoon. So how is it? Can we get water from here?" Qian Shisan asked. The rest of the patrol team also surrounded the bamboo pole and looked at it curiously. "I'm not sure yet, we'll know soon. By the way, how many patrol teams are here at night?" Gu Qingrui asked. 2, one to the east and one to the west, Qian Shisan replied. Gu Qingrui nodded and then chatted for a while. After about 15 minutes, he pulled out the bamboo pole. As expected, more than half of it was wet. Seeing this, Qian Shisan immediately exclaimed, "There's so much water here." "Yes, yes. It seems like our village is saved." The villagers also exclaimed. "Maybe it's because it's close to the river." Gu Qingrui replied. If he wasn't wrong, this was the junction of the above-ground and underground rivers, which was why there was so much water. It should be. "Qingrui, you've saved the entire village this time." Qian Shisan nodded. "Uncle, don't say that. The village chief and the patriarch would find this place sooner or later." Gu Qingrui made a mark and said, "You guys go ahead. We'll head home after we're done with the marking." We'll continue our patrol then. "Take care, you too." Qian Shisan responded and left with the rest. Gu Qingrui and Zhou Ying heaved a sigh of relief simultaneously. Fortunately, they didn't ask too many questions or else they wouldn't know how to answer them. After finding this place, the two didn't continue looking. Instead, they went home to sleep. The next morning, Gu Qingrui told the patriarch about the water source he had found and didn't mention anything else. After the young couple arrived in town, they busied themselves with their own businesses. At noon, Fang Qing returned with his men in a sorry state. He approached Zhou Ying in the backyard and said, "Mistress, something happened." "What happened?" Zhou Ying, picking vegetables under a big tree in the courtyard, looked up and asked. "The refugees at the porridge stand are causing trouble." Fang Qing took a deep breath and explained, "Now, most of the porridge stands don't even provide real porridge. Some of them are so diluted that they can reflect a person's shadow, while others use discarded grains to fill the gaps. As for ours, our flour dumpling soup is also being criticized. Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 250 Locust Plague, What are they complaining about? Zhou Ying asked after being stunned for a moment. "They say there's sand and grit in it." Fang Qing hesitated and continued, "If it were up to me, I wouldn't have provided them with such good food. We should have just made them soup instead. That would save them the trouble of picking on us." Zhou Ying was not surprised. It was inevitable that dried vegetables would contain sand, especially when there was no extra water to wash them with. She looked at them and saw that they weren't injured, letting out a sigh of relief. "What about now? What's the situation there?" "The soldiers suppressed their riots." "Oh right, the organizer has invited all the restaurant owners to the Tian mansion for a gathering. It should be to talk about the porridge stands. All right. Just do what you have to do. After Zhou finished speaking, she got up and washed her hands. She then returned to her room and changed her clothes before going out. However, she didn't go directly to the Tian mansion. She instead went to Hongyun restaurant in search of manager Liu. It just happened that he was about to leave, so the two of them walked toward the Tian residence. Uncle Liu, what do you think of this? Zhou asked on the way. Manager Liu paused for a moment. It's not going to be easy. If the porridge stand can't continue, it'll be chaos all over. Can't we just drive them away? Drive them away. Manager Liu looked at her in surprise. He had always known she was kind, he didn't expect her to say such heartless words. However, this was just what he wanted. It was good to be kind, but never too much, or it would be stupid. That's right. Our situation isn't looking too good either. We didn't harvest much last year, so most people have limited food reserves. Besides, the water supply here is shrinking. Do you think we can support so many more people? You've hit the nail on the head. To be honest, I'm planning to close the restaurant in 3 days. Seriously. It's true. Our food reserves are limited. The military camp needs more food, so most of the food and meat have been provided to them. Is there a shortage of food at the military camp? That's right. Last year, the Dongyang residents didn't collect taxes, so military provisions entirely depended on the imperial court. However, now, half of the country is suffering from a drought. The 5 prefectures in the south and north of Kaiyang had recently encountered a locust plague. There's not a single crop left to harvest. We assumed there was still food there, but apparently, they aren't in a better state than us. Locust plague? Zhou exclaimed. Although she had never seen it before, she had heard of it in her previous life and had also seen it on TV. After a locust plague, it was mentioned that 1,000 miles of land would be barren, with even children getting killed after getting bitten to death. Thinking of this, she recalled her dream when he was living in Mother God's temple. There was a scene of 1,000 miles of barren land. If it was a prophecy, would there be a flood after this? When she thought of this, she couldn't help but feel scared. Indeed, where we are is already considered relatively well off. When Manager Liu said this, he gave her a detailed explanation of the situation in those places. So, save some food for yourself and live a simple life at home, he said. You're also planning to stop at the porridge stand. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but Hongyun restaurant only has less than 1,000 pounds of rice and 400 pounds of white flour left. It's almost the same as mine, so we must work together. Yup, but we can't be the first to say this. I don't think we need to, so let's see how it goes. Manager Liu said, smiling. Zhou was stunned, but she remembered what Fang Qing had said. Some porridge stalls had porridge so thin that it could reflect a person's shadow. There were indeed others more anxious than them. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 251. Notice. Thinking of this, Zhou nodded and replied, understood. Oh right, if there's a harvest in your manor this summer, remember to set aside a portion. Ship it to the military camp. Yes, when Zhou heard his answer, she had mixed feelings. Because she was sure that if the military camp weren't extremely short of food, he would not ask her for this. After all, there were only 120 acres of land in her manor that could be used to grow grain. How much grain could there be left? After that, she looked around and made sure no one was around. She didn't hide anything and told him in a low voice how she had been growing the sweet potatoes and their production quantity. What did you just say? Manager Liu looked at her in shock. Seeing this, Zhou smiled and had to repeat it. You're not joking. Manager Liu's eyes widened. Do you think I would make such a joke in this situation? Let's go. Take me to see that white potato. After Manager Liu finished speaking, he immediately brought her to the manor. Wait, what about the organizer, Mr. Tian, who is waiting for us? Don't worry about him, we'll just show our faces before the meeting ends. After Manager Liu finished speaking, he immediately raised his hand and hailed an ox cart to send them to the manor. Zhou Ying saw that he was so anxious and didn't object anymore. No matter what, he would be responsible if Mr. Tian were looking for them. After the two of them arrived at the manor, they didn't look for anyone and went straight to the field of white sweet potatoes. Zhou Ying pointed to the roots that grew from the leaves and said, "We can cut them down and transplant them. As for harvest, it'll be in August or September." Such a long time. Not really. I planted it after the Qingming festival since it would freeze to death if I planted too early. This whole field is fully grown with white sweet potatoes. Yes, even the grasslands are mainly planted with sweet potatoes. Also, the leaves of these sweet potatoes grow fast and can be used as fodder. Every bit matters, right? How many of these are planted in the village? At that time, the seeds were limited, so there weren't many planted. Each family planted about 1 to 2 acres of them, but I'm not sure if there were people who continued after that. I would like to report this to the third prince. What do you think? Sure. I was planning to report it after it was harvested, but there's no water in the river now. I don't know if it can last until the autumn harvest. No matter what, we have to protect these seedlings. Well, think of a way to deal with the rest. As long as you leave me some seedlings, you can do as you please. After that, the two walked around the sweet potato field once more before returning to the town to look for Mr. Tian. Mr. Tian had just sent off the few other business owners when they arrived. After they left, Tian Jingzhong turned and asked, "What took you two so long? I was hoping you could help me out. I'm sorry we are late. I had something urgent to attend to." Manager Liu apologized. He looked at the few people who had left and said, "From what you're saying, the porridge stand has been discontinued?" "Yeah. This drought has been here for 2 years, and no one has been spared." "Let's go, we'll have a chat inside," Tian Jingzhong said. "All right." Manager Liu and the other two went into the courtyard together. After returning to the main room, Tian Jingzhong asked a maidservant to serve them tea. "What are the two of you planning to do? How long can you last?" Manager Liu shook his head. "It's not that I'm not supporting you. To be honest, Hongyun restaurant has run out of food now. There is also no place to purchase more. So, I'm planning to close it from tomorrow onwards. Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 252 Proposal. Zhou Ying's hand holding the cup of tea stiffened for a moment. This change of words was so fast, she was told it was 3 days later previously and was changed to tomorrow. That can't be. I know that there are 2 large manors and nearly 10,000 acres of fertile land under Hongyun restaurant. There's even a manor that specializes in breeding livestock. How did it get to the point of having to shut down? Tian Jingzhong looked at him in shock. Hongyun was a well-known wealthy restaurant in town. If they also quit, the porridge stall would be unable to continue. You also know my relationship with General Zhou, so I have nothing to hide. Although there was no tax last year, I took 70% of our food rations and sent them to the military camp. In addition to the restaurant's expenses this year, I'm really running out of money." When Tian Jingzhong heard this, he had nothing to say. Instead, he looked at Zhou Ying and asked, "Manager Zhou, what about you? I heard that you bought a lot of grain last spring. It can't be that you can't continue running your business, right?" Zhou Ying shook her head. But we don't have any foundation for continuing to produce food supplies. Besides, the manor didn't have much income last year, so we don't have much left either. Besides, once everyone quits, we'll be the only ones left. I can only hold out for one day, so there's no need for that. What are we going to do about the 10,000 refugees outside? If they cause a ruckus, we'll be in trouble. When Tian Jingzhong heard their reply, he had a headache. Manager Lu and Zhou looked at each other, but neither spoke. After all, this matter was difficult to solve, and they were powerless to do anything. Zhou had food, but she didn't dare to take the risk. Besides, they weren't really at the end of their rope. Help me think of a way. The refugees will have no food to eat and will riot tomorrow. Tian Jingzhong saw that the two of them didn't answer and could only raise his head to ask. I think it's better to have the prominent families donate some surplus grain for sale. We'll sell a limited amount every day and make them more active. Otherwise, even a normal year wouldn't be able to support so many people, let alone now. Zhou spoke after hesitating for a moment. How much can we collect if we do it that way? Tian Jingzhong smiled bitterly. Request it to be mixed with bran, deep-fried hardtack, tofu dregs, and grass. Ahem, don't come up with such ideas. We aren't feeding animals. Manager Lu coughed dryly and looked her in the eyes. It's better than eating dirt. Besides, there are wild vegetables and leaves on the mountain. As long as they don't starve to death, it's okay. Otherwise, if we just hand food out to them constantly, they'll become dependent on us, and it'll be more troublesome. Zhou continued, if they agree to this, I can also take out 10,000 pounds of wheat bran. I'll agree, but we'll have to discuss it first. Tian Jingzhong nodded thoughtfully. Since they were really short on food, there was nothing wrong with eating inferior food to save their lives. If they don't want to eat these, they can just leave. Then we'll take leave. Zhou stood up and said. To be honest, she only thought of feeding people grass because she had a flash of inspiration and thought of the words a former minister in ancient times had said on TV in her previous life. When she had heard it before, she had been angry and felt that he wasn't human. However, after learning about the food production here, hearing about the locust plague, and thinking about the people's current situation, she realized that what he said wasn't without reason. Although the food was rough, it could at least save more lives. Besides, if it weren't for her interspace, they would have been in danger of running out of food too. So, she wouldn't entirely abandon the refugees. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 253 Implementation. That's fine, but you can't go back on your words. I'm counting on your 10,000 pounds of bran. Tian Jingzhong said. No problem. You can look for me anytime. Zhou paused and continued, by the way, the combination of ingredients can't be done casually. If you really want to make a myriad of grains, I suggest you consult a doctor so that people won't get an upset stomach. Alright, I'll remember this. Tian Jingzhong solemnly nodded. Then it's settled. We will no longer provide porridge starting tomorrow. In addition, I'll also donate 10,000 pounds of wheat bran, 20,000 pounds of dried flowers and vines, and 2,000 pounds of tofu residue. Manager Lu stated as he rose to his feet. Thank you so much. I'll get someone to get it for you later. Tian Jingzhong nodded repeatedly. After sending them off, Tian Jingzhong immediately took note of the number they had said, then went to the clinic to find Dr. Luo and Gu Qingrui, asking them to come up with 1 or 2 recipes. He collected another batch of fodder according to the recipe. This time, it was much easier to talk to the other business owners, and they gave him a large amount of what he asked for. The owner of the grain store, in particular, gave 50,000 pounds of wheat bran, 20,000 pounds of breadcrumbs, and crushed rice mixed with rice husks. Tian Jingzhong didn't mind this. He immediately reported the amount of grain donated by everyone to County Mayor Kong in a book after receiving it. County Mayor Kong's eyes lit up when he understood his plan. Not only the wealthy families in their small town couldn't support this porridge stand, but even the county government felt the same way. In addition to the wealthy families preparing to escape, all kinds of conflicts began appearing at the porridge stands. These mixed grains weren't what the rich wanted to keep, so it was much easier for them to donate them. However, this food could save the lives of countless people. You can try implementing this, he said directly after thinking it through. If it works, it will be implemented in the whole county. Yes, they'll make the arrangements now. It can be implemented tomorrow morning. All right. Remember, it's okay if the food is inferior, but it must be clean. If it's moldy, it can't be mixed in. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if someone dies from it. Understood. I'll personally supervise it. Tian Jingzhong patted his chest and said. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and then walked out. After he returned, he began to send people to each household to get fodder. County Mayor Kong called Bai Jingping over. After a brief discussion, Bai Jingping brought his men to wealthy families and proposed to donate various kinds of fodder. After dinner, Zhou told Gu Qingrui about how she leaked the white potato news to Manager Lu. I didn't have time to discuss this with you, so don't be angry. How could I be? It's only a matter of time. If we had told them earlier, we wouldn't have had to worry about the theft and the manor. You're saying, that's right. I think he closed Hongyun restaurant earlier than expected because he wanted to guard the white potato seedlings in the manor. Gu Qingrui stopped and continued, by the way, should we close our grassland taste restaurant? When the porridge stand closes tomorrow, I'm afraid there will be trouble. No. No matter what, we still get a few dozen taels of silver per day in income. If it's closed, how will we feed such a large group of people? Zhou paused for a moment. At most, I will increase the price of the desserts and staples. That way, I can save a lot of money. Seeing her firm attitude, Gu Qingrui had no choice but to say, all right, but do a good job of guarding the place. If the town is in chaos anyway, you'll have to close up. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 254 Accommodation. All right, I'll heed that advice. Zhou nodded. The next day, Manager Lu arrived in a carriage before the couple left the house. Gu Qingrui was surprised as he let him in. Uncle Lu, have you eaten? If you haven't, we have noodles here. I'll make you a bowl of noodles with 2 eggs. I've eaten, I'm here to discuss something. Manager Lu answered, shaking his head. Do tell, Gu Qingrui said. I want to request that some people live in your manor, is that possible? Manager Lu asked. Gu Qingrui and Zhou looked at each other happily. Of course, they wouldn't show it on their faces as Zhou asked, you're doing this for the sweet potato seedlings? Yes, since it's a treasure, we must protect it no matter how tiring it is. Sure, but the water, don't worry about water, food, and accommodation. We'll arrange it ourselves. You want to drill a well? Well, give it a try. It's such a big piece of land, and it's at the foot of the mountain. We'll definitely find a water source. That's exactly what we wanted to do too. Well, leave it to you then. All right, but you must give us more seeds when the time comes. No problem. I'll give you everything you need from the manor, and we'll just ask for more from the village. Then it's a deal. You can't go back on your word. No regrets. Gu Qingrui and Zhou nodded at the same time. After that, the two brought him to the manor. The two villages weren't far from each other. One was on the south side of the river, and the other was on the north. They were in a straight line to each other. Therefore, Xiahe village was a small village closer to the mountain. Because of the lack of arable land, the land here was more for rearing. When they arrived at the periphery of Xiahe village, they saw more than 20 strong men waiting there. There were more than 10 ox carts parked next to them, and they were all full of provisions. Each of them was tall and straight. One look and anyone could tell that they had undergone some sort of special training. When they saw the three, they immediately greeted them respectfully, Butler Lu, Dr. Gu, and Manager Zhou. These are the people I brought. Manager Lu stepped forward and introduced them. Welcome. I'll leave the safety of the manor to you all. Gu Qingrui stepped forward and greeted them. Can I make a small request? He looked at Manager Lu. Go ahead, one see that all of them are martial arts practitioners. A group of people in my manor are learning martial arts, so I hope your men can give them some pointers when they are free. No problem. Even if you don't ask us, well, do so. After all, we won't be able to protect the manor completely. Alright, let's go in then. After Gu Qingrui made his request, he walked them into the manor and found Chang Shun, Qian Zhuang, and the others. He introduced them to each other. In the end, he arranged for Manager Lu and the others to set up camp at the courtyard's edge. That's right, they had brought tents, which saved him a lot of trouble accommodating them. After settling them down, the couple brought Manager Lu to meet Uncle Nian before returning to town. When they entered the town, they found that the streets, which were initially empty, had become lively. However, most of them were refugees, and there were also many beggars. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui stopped the carriage and said to Zhou Ying, do you see that? There are many more beggars on the street. You must be careful when you open your restaurant. I know. You too. Try not to make house calls if you can. Zhou Ying nodded and reminded him. After that, she looked around and found more beggars near her restaurant. It seemed that she had to be extra careful. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 255 Robbing. After she entered her restaurant, she reminded Sun Hongliang to be careful. She also told him that the daily leftovers could be taken out to be distributed to the beggars. After that, she walked to the backyard and looked at the little beggars who had nothing to do. She thought of Manager Lu and the others in the manor, so she walked over and asked, does anyone want to continue learning martial arts? Mistress, where do we learn? Zhu Zi immediately stood up and asked. It's in our manor. If you want to learn, pack your luggage in the afternoon, and they'll send you there in the evening. You'll also have to do farm work in the village. No one is allowed to be lazy, or I won't take you in again. Zhou Ying's face turned serious as she asked, do you all understand? Understood. Mistress, we will definitely work hard. All right. Go back to pack your luggage if you want to go. Zhou Ying reminded them and turned around to the warehouse. To be honest, the food inside here couldn't last long. Fortunately, there was still a lot of meat, which could last longer. At noon, Zhou Ying discovered that the number of guests in the restaurant had more than doubled, and there were people of all ages. After asking around, she found out that not only was Hongyun restaurant closed, but all the other eateries in the town were closed except for 2. She went out and found that even the grain and oil shops were closed, only some shops that sold supplies were still open. She followed the queue and walked to the small official stand in town, discovering that only mixed grain and flour noodles were being sold. Judging by the color, she could tell that the contents inside were of terrible quality. The price it was going for wasn't low either, 3 coppers per pound. Moreover, it was sold in limited quantities. Every strong laborer could receive a pound of noodles daily, children only received half a pound. This amount could only keep the people from starving to death. While she was there, she heard people complaining. Sigh, I'm afraid I can't stay in Dongyang any longer. There's no more porridge or water, and the noodles are getting expensive. There's nothing we can do as Dongyang's residents aren't faring too well either. We'd better find a way to save up some food and head south. How do we save up when they sell it in such a small quantity? There's still food on the mountain here. We could forage for food there now and stock up on dried noodles. Uncle, do you think Dongyang has run out of grain? I'm 80% sure. I heard that the harvest here wasn't bountiful last year, and it was only because there were many rivers that they had a little more than expected. Then what should we do? I heard that the people of Yangshu village found water on the mountain, along with many wild vegetables and wild game. Should we go and try hunting? That means we'll have to go deep into the mountains. Leaving aside the fact that we couldn't hunt those animals, we'll be killed by the bugs in the forest. If the situation worsens, we can only go south. Shouing stayed around and listened. After knowing that most people intended to leave, she was relieved and went home. However, it was too early to relax. 3 days later, Shouing came to the restaurant in the morning and saw Fang Qing and the others with swollen faces. She was stunned and asked, "What's wrong with you guys?" "Mistress, our restaurant was robbed last night," Fang Qing mumbled as he covered his mouth. "How are you all? Are your injuries serious?" Shouing asked. "It's fine, as they're all external wounds. I've used the medicine that Dr. Gu prepared in advance. We're fine." "That's good to hear. Do you know who did it?" "It's those refugees. We've injured 2 of them, but it seems they're going south overnight." Zhao Qing was full of self-blame when he said this. Although they didn't steal any food, they scattered 2 bags of rice and 1 bag of black flour. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 256 Report. He didn't expect to fail in his duty when his mistress trusted him and had always left the restaurant's matters to him to handle. "We've fed these ungrateful bastards porridge for so long, but they're biting back in the end." Shouing was pissed. "They'll have to report this to the authorities," she turned around and said. "No need, it's no use as they've already run away." Fang Qing shook his head. "How is it useless? If we report this to the authorities, at least the officers and soldiers will strengthen their patrols. The rest of those refugees won't dare act so openly again." After Shouing finished speaking, she turned around and went to Tian Jingzhong, informing him of the situation. Tian Jingzhong sighed and said, "To be honest, 3 families in town reported the case this morning. I heard some rich families in the village below were also robbed. There are only 50 soldiers assigned to our town, so we can't take care of everything, so you have to strengthen your protection yourself." "So, the refugees planned this group attack?" "Yes, a group of people likely wants to go south, so they are taking as much as possible before leaving." "Then what if we catch them?" "You can do whatever you want. I'll go to the warehouse where the refugees are staying and give them a warning. Whoever tries to rob again will be dealt with dead or alive, and the government won't care." "I'm relieved to hear that. I'll leave you to your work." After Shouing finished their discussion, she turned around and walked out of the office just in time to meet the patriarch, who was coming up in a hurry. "Grandpa, you are, Shouing. I'll report something first, and we'll talk later." The patriarch ran into the office after he finished speaking. Shouing didn't stop him, she stood aside and waited for him. Sure enough, after a while, the patriarch came out with a dejected look. After seeing Shouing, he stopped and asked, "Are you here to make a police report too?" "That's right. My restaurant was almost robbed yesterday. Fortunately, it was stopped in time, and we didn't suffer a big loss. What happened in the village? Zhou asked. It's our oil mill. More than 100 pounds of peanut oil and about 1,000 pounds of biscuits were stolen. At this point, the patriarch continued with a face of annoyance. It's also because we stopped production that we neglected that side of the mill. Otherwise, we wouldn't have lost so many. It's not all your fault. Who would have thought that it would be a bunch of backstabbers? It's better to store your goods in multiple locations or distribute them to everyone. Or else, it will attract thieves. That's true. I'll try to see what I can do after I go back. The patriarch nodded in agreement. The two chatted for a while before the patriarch left for Guzi's house. Meanwhile, Zhou returned to the restaurant and began to prepare large bamboo skewers. Since Constable Tian had said that he wouldn't pursue the matter if the robbers were beaten to death, she had nothing to worry about. That night, the couple stayed at the restaurant. However, perhaps Tian Jinghong's warning had an effect. The town was calm for 3 days in a row as more refugees left. It wasn't until the night of the 5th day, when everyone's guard was down, that someone finally came through the back door. The tear-inducing powder that fell from the top of the door was the first thing that went off. The robbers choked, coughed, and yelled as soon as the powder was everywhere. Next was a wave of bamboo-made mechanisms. Although it wouldn't cause serious injuries, it would definitely draw blood. As a result, chaos ensued, and the robber cried miserably. It immediately woke up the residents in the restaurant, and they immediately ran out. When Zhou and her husband came out, some people were still stuck near the back entrance, while others rushed to the warehouse. Zhou immediately took out a crossbow and shot at the leg of the person in the warehouse. At the same time, Gu Qingrui rushed forward with a bamboo pole. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 257 Fighting the refugees at the warehouse entrance. The first man screamed after he was shot in the leg and fell. A few of the people behind him didn't manage to stop in time and fell as well. The rest of the robbers had just steadied themselves and had yet to recover their senses when Gu Qingrui rushed over and whipped them with his bamboo pole. They immediately screamed in pain. When Zhao Qing and the others saw this, they rushed over with ropes and tied everyone together. At the entrance, the people who weren't seriously injured saw that Zhou was standing alone and immediately rushed to her. Zhou put away her crossbow and changed to a bamboo pole, rushing over as she aimed at their faces. Since they dared rob her restaurant, all holds were barred. Furthermore, whipping their faces hard with a pole would cause them a concussion, making their movements more sluggish. It was much more effective than aiming at their bodies. However, something unexpected happened quickly. After she had pushed 5 people back, someone grabbed her bamboo pole. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't snatch it back. Seeing this, the person immediately laughed haughtily. Zhou gritted her teeth in anger, exerting force as she took 2 steps forward. After the bamboo pole was arched, she quickly let go of it and ran 2 steps to the left. Once the bamboo pole was released, it whipped into the person's head. Unfortunately, his reaction wasn't slow either. He quickly turned the bamboo pole in his hand and dodged the attack. Zhou took advantage of this moment when he was distracted. She took out a boning knife from her interspace and rushed over, stabbing the knife into his arm that was holding the bamboo pole. She then quickly pulled it out and took 2 steps back. Arg! A scream was heard, followed by a violent roar. Damn woman, you're looking for death. He threw her a flurry of kicks. Zhou listened to the whooshing sound of the wind and knew that this person was a martial arts practitioner. His kicks didn't look weak, so she didn't want to fight him head-on. Therefore, she swung her boning knife and rushed into the middle of the refugees. The timid ones immediately backed away when they saw her knife, and only one of the bolder ones reached out to grab her arm. The boning knife turned half a circle in her hand and changed its direction. She stabbed the hand aiming for her, and a scream was heard again. At the same time, a series of kicks came from behind. Sensing that, Zhou pushed away the man whom she had stabbed after dodging sideways. Pft, pft, pft. A sound. The person who was pushed out was kicked in the stomach and spat out a large mouthful of soup with a faint bloody smell. At that moment, Gu Qingrui rushed over with his men. They began fighting with the person who chased and kicked Zhou, while the others also took their weapons and rushed to the rest of the refugees. Zhou finally breathed a sigh of relief when she saw this, but she soon realized that someone was trying to strike her head. Once Zhou noticed something was wrong, she dodged and defended using Tai Chi. Once she was out of harm's way, she stabbed the assailant in the stomach with her boning knife. Of course, she did not aim for any vital organs. However, this had already frightened the timid refugees around them as they screamed, "Ah! Murder! Murder! Help!" At the same time, all of them began to retreat. Of course, some weren't afraid and continued rushing up, but most didn't have any skills and were dealt with by Zhou. She stabbed those who had not so good intentions. The refugees were so frightened that no one dared to continue attacking her. At that time, the patrolling guards heard the screams and ran over. They knew what was happening with a single glance. They immediately joined the battle, and all the refugees were tied up a moment later. Gu Qingrui immediately ran over and asked, "Babe, are you all right?" "I'm fine. It's not a problem to deal with these scrubs. Besides, I'm carrying this." After Zhou finished speaking, she showed the boning knife in her hand. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 258 Punishment. Gu Qingrui nodded, then walked to the leader of the guards. "Mr. Officer, these refugees broke in and tried to rob us. I'll leave the rest to you." "No problem, but you still must be more careful in the future." When the guard leader heard Gu Qingrui wasn't making things difficult, he immediately nodded and replied. He then called out to the group of guards and led the refugees to the police station. After they left, Gu Qingrui turned to his men and asked, "Is anyone hurt? I'll bandage your wounds in the living room." "No need, master. It's just some external wounds. We can handle it ourselves." Fong Qing shook his head. "All right, then, go to bed early. If there's anything you can't handle, come and find me." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he brought Zhou to their bedroom. The next morning, everyone was awakened by the sound of gongs. After getting up, he looked at a group of people leaving town and asked around. He discovered that the refugees caught yesterday were being paraded through the streets and would all be sent to the mill to work as coolies. This punishment is light. People like them should be executed directly. Fong Qing remarked indignantly. Sometimes, death is a relief, but a life worse than death is the greatest torture for them. Gu Qingrui explained. After noticing his confused look, he continued, "The mill in town is running non-stop all day long. After entering, not only will you not be able to eat your fill, but you will also have to do heavy work. The treatment is worse than that of a donkey. Anyone with even a minor health problem will perish." "I see. No wonder they're all crying. That's satisfying to know." Fong Qing nodded in understanding. "They deserved it. It's already good enough that we didn't take their lives." Li Xing clutched his half-swollen face and spoke through gritted teeth. "That's because Tian Jingzhong doesn't dare execute this many people, or else the remaining refugees would riot." Of course, Gu Qingrui only thought about this and didn't say it aloud. "This matter is over," he said after a while. "But we still must be more careful to prevent anyone from taking revenge." "Revenge? Do they dare to? Fong Qing asked in surprise. Why wouldn't they? Among their many relatives, there will always be someone brave and foolish. This is also why there is a saying that criminals will implicate their families 9 generations. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked into the house. At the same time, he reminded them, hurry up and wash up. It's time for breakfast. The next few days were unusually peaceful. Although the public wells in town had all dried up, the refugees were leaving quickly instead of rioting. 10 days later, 2 wells were dug in the village, and the water inside was sufficient. This meant that the sweet potatoes in the village were growing healthy. As a result, Tian Jingzhong moved to Shanghe village and commandeered the well at the village entrance to become a public well. Those who lacked water in the nearby villages could come here to draw water in limited quantities. In the manor, under the leadership of Manager Liu, they also dug out 2 deep water wells. One was a well with sweet water, but the amount it could produce wasn't significant. However, there was plenty of water at the mouth at the foot of the mountain. Thus, not only did Manager Liu bring his men to water all the sweet potatoes, but under Chang Shun's guidance, they also eliminated the wild grass and planted some white potato seedlings. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of Gu Qingxi's wedding. However, because the drought was getting increasingly severe, it wasn't celebrated on a large scale, only the villagers and a few important relatives were invited. At the same time, Gu Zi and the rest of the people eventually built a small courtyard in the village and stayed there because of water availability. After Gu Qingxi's marriage, it was the summer harvest season. Wheat harvesting wasn't ideal even in places with plenty of water, such as Shanghe village. Each acre could only produce 23 pounds of tiny, shriveled rice. The other places that lacked water had basically no harvest. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 259 Exchanging Wheat After the Summer Harvest, Zhou found Manager Liu. Uncle Liu, how's the wheat harvest in your 2 villages? Why? Do you want some? Manager Liu asked with a smile after pausing for a moment. That's right. As you can see, our farm is full of white sweet potatoes. There are still 2 to 3 months before they can be harvested. We have to eat before they ripen. Zhou immediately replied with a smile. I can only give you 1,000 pounds of wheat. Manager Liu nodded. Sure, as long as we can get through this. I'll pay you 10 coppers per pound. How about it? Manager Liu shook his head. Let's trade. I don't have any feed for my cattle and sheep, so I want you to provide me some white potato vines back. That's fine too, as they grow back fast. After the flowers wither and bear fruit, we'll have cut some of the vines. I'll give them to you then. Zhou stated. Why do you have to cut off the vines? Shouldn't you keep the vines and leaves on it so the potato can grow bigger? Manager Liu asked in confusion. Think about it, there's only so much fertilizer in the field. If the vines overgrow, wouldn't the fertilizer all be wasted? We're supposed to be prioritizing the fruit, not the leaves. Also, they will absorb fertilizer when it takes root in the ground. So when you no longer need the vines and leaves, you must start pruning them. Otherwise, the potatoes won't be sizable. Not bad, you've already studied it thoroughly in such a short time. Manager Liu commented thoughtfully. So. An old farmer in the village also discovered it. After the 2 of them exchanged a few polite words, Zhou returned to her restaurant. She spoke to Sun Hongliang, brother Sun, put a sign at the door that we are buying wheat. 1 pound for 20 coppers. No matter how high the price we are paying, I'm afraid we won't be able to get any, right? Sun Hongliang was surprised by her request. Let's try, just in case. Zhou sighed and continued, if we can't buy any, our restaurant will only sell vegetable dishes soon. I understand. Sun Hongliang also understood that she was trying to find a way out. Otherwise, they couldn't sell anything without grain or wheat. Early the next morning, Manager Lu sent someone to deliver 2 carts of wheat. Zhou asked them to transport it directly to the manor, as it wasn't safe to leave it in the restaurant. It was likely to cause more issues. As expected, 5 days after the sign was put up, no one came to sell their wheat, and the water in the well was getting lesser and lesser. In the end, Zhou reluctantly closed the restaurant while Fang Qing and the others stayed to guard it. As for Sun Hongliang and his family, they followed Manager Lu to move to the manor. Zhou also returned to the village and began to harvest her chilies. After harvesting all the chilies, Zhou climbed the mountain to see if she could forage for something to cover up her act of taking stuff out of her interspace. Madame Chiao spoke up after dinner in the Gu family's old house. Son, in a while, you should go and deliver 50 pounds of black flour to your third brother. No, I don't agree. We have only harvested about 1,000 pounds of wheat from our 50 acres of land this year. It's already not enough for us to eat. If we give them any, we will starve to death. Mrs. Lu continued, besides, their lives are much better than ours. They wouldn't care about that little bit of black flour. Madame Chiao glared at her unhappily. This was the thinking of someone in a lower position. Even if she were made the main wife of the family, it didn't do any good to her overall vision of the family. She looked at Mrs. Yao and asked, what do you think? When Mrs. Yao heard this, she was also somewhat unwilling. There were more than 10 people in the family. At most, 1,000 pounds of wheat mixed with vegetables would be enough for them to eat for 4 months. She didn't want to give a speck of it to anyone else. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 260 Delivering food. However, Mrs. Yao also knew it wasn't appropriate for them to keep receiving the young couple's goodwill without returning the favor. She could only reply, our situation isn't good either. Why don't we give them 20 pounds? After Madame Chiao heard it, her heart felt much better, although she was still dissatisfied. She looked at Father Gu and ordered, 50 pounds is my final decision. Also, bring some dried vegetables over. After she finished speaking, she went back to her room. Mother, I'll remember it. I'll send it over in a while. Father Gu spoke hurriedly. Mrs. Lu wanted to refute, but Father Gu glared at her. She could only snort coldly and said to Mrs. Gua, hurry up and wash the dishes. Who are you waiting for? Although Mrs. Gua was unwilling, she didn't want to be someone Mrs. Lu could vent her anger on. She immediately got up and got busy. When Mrs. Sun saw this, she immediately got up and helped. Father, I'll go with you, Gu Qingye stood up and said. No need. You've been carrying water for the whole day. You should go to bed early. Father Gu stood up and waved to Gu Qingxi. Qingxi, come with me. Yes, uncle. Gu Qingrui immediately responded and stood up. Afterward, the two packed about 50 pounds of black flour and a sack of various dried vegetables. They rushed to Gu Shengrui's house once they were ready. After entering their housing area, Gu Qingxi greeted Zhuang, who obediently lay on the ground. The father and son carried the things inside. Gu Qingrui heard the commotion and walked out of the house. He was stunned when he saw them carrying some stuff in. He took the bag of flour from his father and asked, Father, why did you bring food over? We don't lack any food for the moment. However, he still led them into the house after that. It isn't my business whether you are lacking food or not. I ground some new grains today, so I just thought that I should let you try them. Father Gu spoke with his hands behind his back. Yes, there are also dried vegetables. Gu Qingxi laughed and echoed. Thank you, father. Gu Qingrui smiled and nodded. Zhou also put down her book at this time and came over to greet the two. Father, Qingxi. Quickly, come and take a seat. Father Gu answered and sat down. He saw 2 books on the table and asked in surprise, Are you guys learning by reading? I guess so. I was bored and found some travel notes in the bookstore to read and gain some knowledge. After Zhou finished speaking, she took 2 clean cups and poured them each a cup of wolfberry chrysanthemum tea. That's good. There's no end to learning. If you can learn something, it's good, and it will be useful one day. Father Gu accepted the tea and nodded in agreement. To be honest, he had always thought that she was illiterate. He didn't expect her to be able to read. It seemed that he had really neglected them in the past. Zhou smiled. You guys continue chatting. I'll go and boil some water. After that, she took the empty pot and walked out. Are you really going to close Grassland Taste Restaurant for the moment? Father Gu looked at Gu Qingrui and asked. Yes, we're short on food supplies now. It's not easy to buy grain and alcohol, so we might as well stop for the moment. It's also better, saving us the trouble. Father Gu thought of what he had heard about the restaurant being almost robbed and nodded in agreement. That's fine. With your medical skills, you won't have to worry about your future. After a while, Zhou came back with a pot of water and a basket. She put it on the table and said, Here are some fruits. Father, you can bring them back for everyone to try. Fruit? Where did you buy them? Mr. Gus' eyes lit up. To be honest, other than the village at the foot of the mountain, it took a lot of work to find even a fresh vegetable, let alone fruits. This was something truly rare. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 261 Return Gift. I found them on the mountain. I saw they were quite fresh, so I picked some back. After Zhou finished speaking, she removed the cloth covering the fruits. There was half a basket of peaches and some cherries. She had seen these 2 types of trees on the mountain, but all kinds of insects had ruined their fruits. I'll take it then. Your grandmother loves peaches the most. I'll take them back to satisfy her craving. Father Gus' eyes lit up when he saw the fruits inside the basket. Really? Then I'll pick some up when I have the chance to. Don't, these are enough. The mountains aren't peaceful now, so you'd better not go deep into the mountains. Alright, I'll heed that advice. By the way, do you still have the seeds of rapeseed or any green vegetables? We want to plant some more to eat, just enough for 1 plot of land for each. Father Gu asked. We have a little. Please wait a moment. Zhou said and went to the west room. She then walked to a corner. She took some seeds from her inner space and wrapped them in a bag. Finally, she also gave him a bag of lettuce seeds. After chatting for a while, Father Gu carried the basket and went home with Gu Qingxi. After sending them off, Gu Qingrui said, Let's leave this flower outside. It's nice we have these to put out in the open as a cover. Alright. Zhou replied and asked, How's the business in the clinic? It's not that great. Those who have businesses or properties in the south have all gone there. Most of the remaining people are farmers and do their best to stay alive by themselves. I don't even have the chance to make house visits these days. But this is also good as I can spend time learning from Dr. Luo, especially in detoxification. He is much more skilled than me. Gu Qingrui paused and continued, By the way, the people from the Zhou family's clinic have also left. Ignore them. As long as they don't come looking for trouble, we'll pretend we don't know anything. Zhou said as she switched the oil lamp for a table lamp and sat back on her bed to read. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui also sat down and got busy. On the other end, after Father Gu took the fruits back, everyone cheered, and even Mrs. Liu's expression brightened. Madame Chiao was delighted. Zhou Ying, this girl, really knows how to enjoy. After she returned to the village, I heard that she went up the mountain daily and has never come back empty-handed. That's because she has nothing to do. Mrs. Liu said so indignantly. So, do you have something to do? Madame Chiao unhappily replied. Grandma, why don't I go up the mountain tomorrow? Gu Ziqiang offered. Of course, whether she could pick any wild fruit was another problem entirely. She mainly wanted to leave a good impression on the old lady so that she could say a few good words when she married. Second, Uncle Gu didn't know she was just being polite, but he stopped her immediately. Don't. I doubt you can even come down the mountain safely. Besides, Zhou Ying knows some martial arts, and with Heir Zhuang's protection, she can protect herself well. Indeed. You're a young lady, and it's not appropriate for you to climb a mountain. It'll be troublesome if something happens. Father Gu nodded in agreement. Yes, fruits are not essential. If there are any, it'll just take a few bites. If there are none, then forget it. We can't risk our lives for this little bit of food. Mrs. Chiao quickly echoed. No matter what, she was the granddaughter she had watched grow up. She was already at the age of marriage, and no one wanted anything to happen to her. Afterward, she told Mrs. Sun, you can wash a peach for each person and a plate of cherries. Everyone should give them a try. When Mrs. Sun heard this, she immediately smiled and went out with the basket of fruits. The next morning, Gu Qingrui woke up and carried 2 buckets of water, driving his carriage to pick up Gu Qingxi. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 262. The wolves are here. On the other hand, Zhou Ying used a large plastic bucket to fill up with water from her inner space 3 times, watering her sweet potato field. After that, she took out 20 purple perilla plants from a corner and planted them in the field. She locked up and brought Heir Zhuang up the mountain. After arriving at the mountain, Zhou Ying was specifically looking for wild vegetables, especially dandelion and woad. If something really happened, these 2 things could save lives. A woman and her dog shuttled through the mountain. Suddenly, Heir Zhuang started barking. Zhou Ying immediately turned her head and saw him chasing a rabbit. Zhou Ying shook her head and continued picking up the woad roots. However, Heir Zhuang still didn't come back. She had no choice but to get up and search for herbs as she chased after her dog. She didn't have to go far before she heard Heir Zhuang's low growl. Just as she was about to call out, she saw something moving in the grass. She thought it was a rabbit and just shut her mouth. However, Zhou Ying was shocked when she saw 2 wolves leaping out of the grass and pouncing on Heir Zhuang. Fortunately, the dog was quick-witted and didn't fight the wolves head-on. Instead, he turned around and ran in the opposite direction of her. Zhou Ying's heart pounded. She immediately took out a crossbow from her interspace, loaded an arrow with knockout powder, and shot it at a wolf from behind. Awoo! A blood-curdling howl was heard as the wolf was shot in the hind leg and fell to the ground. Heir Zhuang and the remaining wolf heard the cry and immediately turned their heads. The 2 animals immediately reacted when they saw the wolf on the ground with Zhou Ying over it. The wolf raised its head and howled to call its companions while Heir Zhuang pounced on it. At the same time, Zhou Ying also took the opportunity to shoot another arrow. The wolf wanted to dodge when it heard the arrow's whistling sound, but Heir Zhuang didn't give it a chance. He blocked the wolf's path of retreat. Thus, although the wolf managed to avoid the fatal blow to its throat, it still brushed past one of its legs, and blood immediately flowed. As soon as the smell of blood came out, the wolf's ferocity was stimulated, and it turned around and pounced on Zhou. Zhuang stopped it from doing so. He didn't directly confront the wolf but instead began encircling it. After a few moments, the wolf fell to the ground with a thud under the effect of the knockout powder. Zhuang paused for a moment, then lowered his head and bit it a few times. After making sure the wolf wasn't moving anymore, he wagged his tail and ran to Zhou Ying's side. He ran around her in circles and asked for praise. "Well done. I'll give you an extra meal tonight. But we must leave quickly, or else we'll be surrounded by more wolves. That'll really put our lives in danger." After Zhou Ying finished speaking, she quickly killed the 2 wolves with her boning knife and threw them into her interspace. She then scattered a large bag of tear-inducing powder nearby to interfere with the wolves' sense of smell. Once all that was done, she quickly ran down the mountain with her dog. Not long after, the howls of wolves could be heard from behind. The number of wolves in this pack was quite large. Zhuang, who had been strolling, was frightened by the howls. He didn't dare to play anymore and quickened his pace down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, Zhou Ying saw the patriarch with a group of strong men guarding the foot of the mountain. The patriarch saw her coming down the mountain and asked, "Zhou Ying, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I ran down the mountain as soon as I heard wolves howling." Zhou Ying shook her head. "That's good. I haven't heard a wolf howl in the outer area of this mountain for many years." What an unexpected. At that point, the patriarch looked at her. "Don't go up the mountain anytime soon. Wolves move in packs, and it will be dangerous if you encounter them." "I know, but we can't keep guarding against them. Why don't we dig some sorry for the inconvenience?" "Thank you very much." Chapter 263 Setting Up Traps. We do need to dig more. The patriarch nodded in agreement. After a few polite exchanges, Zhou Ying went home. After entering the interspace that night, Gu Qingrui was shocked to see 2 wolves. He quickly turned his head and asked, "Did you encounter wolves on the mountain today?" "Yup, fortunately, they were just 2 wolves that were alone. After killing them, we left the mountain." Zhou Ying looked at him with a dry smile. Gu Shengru's heart softened when he saw her fawning eyes, but he still said with lingering fear, "From today on, you're not allowed to go up the mountain anymore. If you're free, go to the mountains in your interspace and collect the herbs you need." "I know. I definitely won't go there anytime soon." Zhou Ying nodded. "You're not allowed to brush me off, or I'll eat durians in front of you daily." Zhou Ying's face scrunched when she heard that. The things she hated the most in her life were durians and stinky tofu. She couldn't even smell them. If Gu Qingrui didn't like these things, she wouldn't keep them in her interspace. Of course, she wasn't afraid if they were only in the warehouse. After all, he was the only one who could take the items out of the warehouse. The worst thing was that he had even planted a few durian trees in her interspace, and she didn't expect him to turn around and disgust her with this. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth in anger. Gu Qingrui looked at her provocatively and said, "I mean what I say. If you don't believe me, you can try." After speaking, he turned around and took out a knife to skin the 2 wolves. He hung the skins on the 2nd floor of the villa. As for the meat, he cut it into pieces, stacked it up, and put it in a big bucket to cook. Seeing this, Zhou Ying turned around and went to the mountain. The fruits on the mountain had ripened, and she had to quickly pick them up to store them in the warehouse, or else they would be wasted. The next day, the patrol team, which usually patrolled at night, began to patrol during the day. Zhou Ying didn't dare go up the mountain again, so she only went to the manor with Zhuang. Chang Shun, busy pruning the white sweet potato vines in the field, saw her coming and immediately greeted her. "Mistress, what are you doing here?" "Nothing much. I had nothing to do at home, so I came over to take a look." Zhou asked, how are Qian Zhuang and the children? How are they? Did they cause you any trouble? No, they're all fine, and they're all very diligent. They're now living in the courtyard and taking care of themselves, or rather, they don't need to be taken care of at all. At this point, Chang Shun paused and said, it's just that they ate a little too much. I'm afraid the grain in the village can't support their consumption. Oh, you are lacking in food. I'll discuss it with Uncle Nian later. We can kill a cow or sheep every 3 to 5 days. I'll thank you on behalf of everyone. My stomach can't take it anymore after not seeing meat for half a month. Chang Shun immediately laughed when he heard that. All right, I'll go over and take a look. After Zhou finished speaking, she exchanged a few polite words with Manager Liu, then turned around and walked toward the farm. She first walked around the place and saw that the cattle and sheep were doing well. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief. Finally, after asking around, she found Uncle Nian at the foot of a mountain, setting up traps with his men. Zhou was stunned when she saw that the nearly 2-meter-wide trench was full of sharpened bamboo skewers. Uncle, are you guarding against wolves? That's right, who would have thought that wolves would appear again? We have to set up these traps, or it will be too late when the wolves really come. At this point, the old man paused and recalled, I remember when I was young, there was a year when 30 wolves came to the village. In just a short while, they bit 300 sheep to death. I see. You really have to guard against it well, then. I'll bring some pepper and mustard over later. Wolves and their sharp noses are most afraid of these things. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 264 Gifting Tear-Inducing Powder, Then I'll be waiting. Uncle Nian immediately smiled and nodded. Wolves weren't only strong in combat but they also held grudges. Therefore, they didn't want to kill them unless it was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, they would have to exterminate the entire wolf pack. However, a wolf pack wasn't easy to exterminate. Many villagers would die from exterminating every last wolf. So, if there were a way to deal with the wolves, it would naturally be the best. Zhou nodded and continued, Uncle Nian, to save on consuming grain, I plan to slaughter a cow or sheep every few days so that the people in the village can eat meat. What do you think? You're kind for doing so, but try to slaughter as little as possible. After this draft, the price of meat will definitely rise a lot. Furthermore, the manor was very safe with Manager Liu and the others around, so there isn't any need to be afraid of robberies. Therefore, if you really want to improve the meals of everyone, you can take in pigs. Pigs have a lot of meat and are more filling. Pigs. Zhou paused for a moment to think before nodding. Indeed. Then it's decided. Let's serve them pork first. We'll talk about cattle and sheep if there's nothing else. Alright, you can send the pigs you buy over directly. I promise I won't waste a single drop of pig blood. Afterwards, Zhou gave him a few more instructions, telling him he could directly look for Manager Liu if he needed anything, and she returned to her village. She went to her interspace in the afternoon and took out some devil chilies and mustard powder. She used them to make 2 big bags of tear-inducing powder. Qiao Nyang walked over with her pregnant belly when she was just done and asked, Mistress, are you making tear-inducing powder again? I can feel my nose getting choked from next door. Yeah, there are wolves on the mountain. I have to prepare some for self-defense. After Zhou finished speaking, she brought a stool for her to sit on. You weren't busy drying the beans today. Thank you, mistress. We were almost done yesterday, said Qiao Nyang after she sat down. My eldest sister-in-law is taking care of the rest with the 2 children. It seems that you're living a stable life. It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this blessing. Qiao Nyang smiled shyly. Honestly, although they weren't wealthy, it was a comfortable life. Her husband was down to earth, willing to work, and knew how to love her. Her eldest sister-in-law wasn't like the other families, who would find trouble for no reason. Instead, she had helped them a lot, which was a lifesaver. That's great. Brother Tian is a man worth entrusting your life to. Zhou said so and gave her about half a pound of tear-inducing powder. It isn't peaceful now, so keep some for self-defense. Thank you so much. My mistress, Qianyang, thanked her as she took it. Sigh. Since you've already broken away from your status as a servant, don't always mention that I used to be your mistress. Even if I've moved on from my servant status, I'll always be your servant. This is not going to change. Zhou smiled and shook her head. She put away the tear-inducing powder and brought her into the house. They sat down, drank tea, and chatted for a while. Only when Qianyang felt tired did she go home. As for Zhou, she took a portion of tear-inducing powder and gave some to the patriarch so that he could distribute it to the patrol team for self-protection. At night, the couple chose 2 fat pigs from her interspace. The following day, the tear-inducing powder and the pigs were sent to the manor. Once that was done, Gu Qingrui drove the carriage to town while Zhou stayed in the manor to have a meal. In the afternoon, she brought home 5 pounds of pork ribs and 2 pounds of pork belly. Someone came to visit for medication help in the afternoon. It happened that the patient required surgery, something Gu Qingrui was good at. After confirming it was a patient from the wealthy Wang family in town, he took the first aid kit and followed them. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Chapter 256 Ambush. However, Gu Qingrui's footsteps gradually slowed when he reached the Wang family's house. This was not the first time he visited the Wang family. Every time he came here, there would be guards on duty, and the nearby streets were clean without dust. But now, not only were leaves and branches flying everywhere on the street, but even dog and cat poop were all over the ground. There wasn't even a shadow of a person in sight at the main gate of the residence, where people usually entered and exited. He immediately became vigilant. Did something happen to the Wang family? Or was it? Thinking of this, he looked at the person who had led him here and quickly realized that he had been careless. Because this person was really too thin, so thin that he was a little out of shape. Although the harvest this year wasn't good, with the Wang family's heritage, they wouldn't starve their servants to this extent. Why did you stop? Hurry up. Our old master is still waiting for you to treat him. The guide saw him stop and immediately turned his head to urge him. Doesn't your family's 3rd concubine have medical skills? She'll do fine for emergency treatment. My stomach suddenly hurts. I have to go to the toilet to resolve it. Gu Qingrui turned around and ran to a public toilet not far away. Wait. Don't we have a side toilet in the manor? Let's go over there. The guide immediately rushed over and blocked his way. No, your master is a clean freak. If I use your manor's side toilet, I'll have to wait for your master's approval. It'll be too late by then. Gu Qingrui pushed him away and probed carefully. The guide was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that there would be such a problematic person. He quickly stopped him and said, "It'll be fine if I run faster ahead to ask for permission. Just follow me." Gu Qingrui knew he was lying when he heard the person's reply. This was because Gu Qingrui was simply making things up when he said he needed the old master's approval to use the toilet. Looking at his anxious mood, he confirmed that the Wang residence was an ambush. So, when Gu Qingrui saw him coming over again, he twisted his arm and pulled him down to the ground. Gu Qingrui knelt, lifted the guide's arms, and pressed his face down on the ground. He stopped and asked, "Who are you, and who are the people inside?" Cough, cough, ah. The guide returned to his senses and struggled a few times, but it was no use. The more he struggled, the more pain he felt. He could only shout, "My lord, big brother, help, help." Although he was shouting with all his might, his voice was muffled. He was subdued with his head lowered, which meant his shouts couldn't reach the ideal volume to be heard from the residents. Only one person could listen to them, and it was Gu Qingrui. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui forcefully twisted the person's wrist. Following a muffled groan, he leaned over and asked, "Who's inside? Tell me the truth, or I'll take your life first." Then, he removed a scalpel from his first aid kit and waved it in front of the person's eyes. The scalpel of fine steel reflected a sharp light under the sunlight, and the glint blinded the guide. Of course, Gu Qingrui had no intention of just showing off. He stuck it directly to his face and made a light cut, thus, a wound that could only bleed was born. The guide felt a chill on his face, and then he felt something flowing down. When he saw that it was blood, he was so scared that he started to shiver. Gu Qingrui sneered. "What do you think? My scalpel here is sharp, huh? It can cut your windpipe without any effort." After he finished speaking, he placed the scalpel on his neck. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you very much." Chapter 266. Jumping out, the guide didn't dare move anymore and stammered, "There's an ambush inside. It's the people who worked at the mill." Gu Qingrui was stunned for a moment. "So you're the group of people who went to the restaurant to rob us and were later arrested?" On the other hand, the people lying in ambush inside the courtyard had heard the guide's voice, but they didn't see him come in for a long time, so they sent someone out to take a look. The person who came out heard Gu Qingrui's question and shouted, "Yeah, it's us. We'll take revenge on you today." After he shouted, he rushed up. Gu Qingrui immediately kicked the person under his feet, slamming him into the other person running here. The two of them fell and rolled like a ball. At the same time, the people inside heard the shouts and immediately rushed out. There were 25 people, and they quickly surrounded Gu Qingrui. Gu Qingrui looked at the sticks in their hands and knew he couldn't face them head-on. As he turned and ran, he took out a handful of knockout powder from his first aid kit and scattered it behind him. Everyone saw the white powder and immediately retreated to the side. However, some still breathed in some of it, and those who inhaled it fell after taking 2 steps. Nearly half of the people went down, and those who dodged immediately scattered and tried to surround him. Gu Qingrui immediately pretended to panic and shouted, "Robbery! Someone's robbing me!" At the same time, he observed the positions of the crowd and finally fixed his eyes on the first person on his right. He ran the fastest, and the weapon in his hand was a special walking stick, sturdy and suitable to lash out as a makeshift staff. So, when Gu Qingrui was escaping, he suddenly turned and rushed over to the person. Before the person could react, Gu Qingrui threw the scalpel at his face. The man was shocked and dodged subconsciously. In a flash, Gu Qingrui grabbed the walking stick from his hand. At the same time, he rolled over to pick up the scalpel and threw the first aid kit under a wall. When the people behind him rushed over, he swept in a wide arc with his staff. The hit people were in so much pain that they could only lie on the ground, hugging their legs and groaning. Gu Qingrui stood back up. He fought against the rest of them with his makeshift staff in his right hand and a scalpel in his left. From time to time, he would sneak in an attack. He had taken down 5 of them quickly, and each had cuts on their weapon-dominant hands. Although it wasn't enough to kill them, they would definitely bleed to death if they weren't dealt with quickly. "You're really ruthless, kid," an elderly man with a pained expression said at this time. "Not as ruthless, thick-skinned, or hostile as you. After being punished for robbing, you didn't stop and even plan to take revenge. Aren't you afraid of losing these people's lives? What a selfish man you are. Gu Qingrui commented sarcastically. Fuck off. Whoever lives or dies today will depend on their own abilities. Everyone, let's attack together. The old man's face twitched, and he gritted his teeth. It's not too late to back out now. Otherwise, it'll be over when the patrol team comes. Gu Qingrui rushed up to the old man after he said his piece. If he didn't guess wrong, this person was their leader. When he realized this, he decided to get rid of him first. He had to deal with the problem at its root, and the rest will fall apart. Gu Qingrui only managed to hit his arm once, but he managed to throw his opponent into a state of confusion. He then sent a flying kick at his opponent's chest. Pfft! The old man violently spat out a mouthful of blood and was kicked nearly 10 feet away, falling to the ground and not getting up again. Chapter 267 Injured. It took a long time to describe the fight, but it all happened in the blink of an eye. The few people surrounding them were dumbfounded and didn't dare to step forward. At that time, the patrolling guards followed the shouting and came over. When they saw the group of people, they shouted, "Why are you all here again? The constable has just let you go, and now you're making trouble again." The captain then walked toward Gu Qingrui and asked, "Dr. Gu, are you all right?" "I'm fine, but these people must be dealt with seriously. They're more abominable than bandits." Gu Qingrui glanced at the crowd and commented. The refugees immediately put down the sticks in their hands and said, "We're innocent. We didn't plan on doing it, but the village chief forced us to do so." Yes. Last time, his 2 sons went to rob a restaurant and were both caught. When they came out, one died, and one was seriously injured. That's why he's blackmailing us to help him take revenge. Yes, our food and provisions are all controlled by his trusted aides. If we don't listen to him, we will starve. The old man, who had been struggling to get up, vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood after hearing this and fainted. When the captain heard this, his face immediately darkened. He waved his hand at the guards to capture them. "Dr. Gu, we'll have to trouble you to come with us." "That's fine." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he picked up the first aid kit and followed. After arriving at the Yamk, Tian Jingzhong seriously interrogated the refugees. After learning that the village chief had indeed coerced them, he arrested more than a dozen heavily involved criminals and their families for execution. This included the 5 injured people, which saved some medical expenses. Although the others were released, they were expelled from Qingshui town, and their faces were plastered throughout the county. Hence, they were chased out of Yunhe County within 2 days. The group could only take a small amount of food to the south. Of course, this was a story for later. After Gu Qingrui left the police station, he returned to the clinic and got Dr. Luo to get treated. Although he wasn't wounded, he was hit twice with a stick, once on his back and once on his leg. Although it wasn't fatal, the bruises were still scary looking. He didn't dare let Zhou know about those. After that, Dr. Luo clapped his hands and said, "All right, you're a medical professional yourself, so I don't need to remind you of what you need to do. Take a good rest for the next 2 days. Forget it. It'll be exposed if I stay at home." Gu Qingrui said this as he dressed. "You have to be more careful in the future. If you can't win the fight, run. Don't force yourself. If something were to happen to you, what would Zhou do?" "Yes, but sometimes it's impossible to run. The best choice is to face it." Dr. Luo shook his head and ignored him. Instead, he packed up and left. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui sat down and drank 2 glasses of water. After resting for a while, he called Gu Chexi and rushed home in his carriage. In the evening, Zhou had nothing to do. She steamed 2 giant crabs, made a pot of spicy shrimp, and stewed half a pot of corn and pork rib soup. Gu Chengui looked at the sumptuous dinner on the table, and the corner of his mouth twitched. If it were in the past, he would have eaten them happily. He could only cat ribs now due to his injuries. "What's wrong with you?" Zhou asked curiously. "Don't you like spicy food? Why don't you eat the prawns? You can have them." "I have a toothache because of the heat. I'll eat it another day when I have the chance," Gu Chengui replied while gnawing on a rib. Zhou didn't think much about it. After the meal, she made him a pot of herbal tea and said, "The weather is really getting dry. You have to drink more water in town." Chapter 268 A Small Joke, You Too. It's just too hot these days. Remember to drink 2 bottles of energy drink every day to prevent dehydration. "I will," Zhou replied. She got up, lit a plate of mosquito incense, and put it in the room. Coincidentally, someone came to visit Gy Qingrui for medical consultation. He got up and went to attend to the patient. When he was sending the patient off, Zhou found that his leg was walking funny and his shoulder was stiff. When he returned, she asked directly, "You're not feeling heaty but injured, right?" Gu Qingrui was stunned for a moment and shook his head. "Why would I be injured? I'm a doctor, not a guard. Let's quickly pack up and enter the interspace." Zhou snorted coldly after hearing that. She got out of bed and walked in front of him, raised her hand, and was about to take off his clothes. Gu Qingrui quickly grabbed her hand and said, "Don't. I'm injured, but there's no wound. A stick just hit me." "Really?" Zhou raised her head with a look of disbelief. "It's true. Since I've answered, there's no need to hide it from you." After Gu Qingrui said this, he finally told her how he had almost fallen into an ambush today. No matter what, they've already left. We can finally breathe a sigh of relief. After Zhou heard this, she bit the back of his hand and said, "If you dare to lie again, I'll punish you by making you eat mangoes for a month." "You little rascal, you knew I was allergic to mangoes, but you still want me to eat them. Are you trying to murder your husband?" Gu Qingrui retorted with a smile. The words, "murder your husband," made Zhou suddenly remember their identity as husband and wife. She thought of their married life, and her face suddenly blushed as she rolled her eyes at him. At the same time, under the light of the oil lamp, Gu Qingrui looked at her hazy outline and shy but lively eyes. He felt his throat tighten. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her lips eagerly. The familiar yet strange feelings that had been suppressed for a long time were stirred up and burned passionately like dry wood and fire. Just as the couple wanted to take a step further, Gu Qingrui took a deep breath. The two instantly sobered up. They looked at each other and smiled, but soon they kissed again. But this time, it was a sweet kiss. It was a kiss of enjoyment but also a kiss of nostalgia. After this kiss, they kissed again. After repeating this several times, Zhou finally stopped when she felt her lips swell. She held his shoulder and said, "Let me see your injuries." "I'm really fine. It's just a bruise. I'll be fine after a few days of rest." Gu Qingrui shook his head. "Nope." Zhou shook her head. She knew he was a person with strong self-control. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lived together for nearly 2 years and still haven't done anything. So, if it were only a bruise, it wouldn't hurt so much that he grimaced in pain. Gu Qingrui looked at her firm expression and smiled. He gave her a peck on the lips and said, "Is it because you've been in abstinence for 2 years, and now you want to eat me up?" Zhou paused for a moment. After she understood what he meant, she pinched his waist and said, "You don't want your bird anymore, do you?" "Wait, I'm just joking. I'll let you see it, okay? But let's go to the interspace. Anyway, now is a good time to take a shower. It's so hot around here." Gu Qingrui grabbed her hand and replied, "We'll have to see if your body can enter the shower." After Zhouing finished speaking, she turned around and locked up, then took him into her interspace. When they reached the bedroom in the villa, Gu Qingrui found some safflower ointment and took off his shirt. "Can you help me take a look?" Zhouing saw the swollen black and purple wound and asked, "Was it Dr. Luo who treated it?" "Yes, it was so painful that I almost cried out. I think you should get an X-ray. This injury looks a little serious." Zhouing decided to take him into a small operating room. She turned on the instrument and took an X-ray of him. Chapter 269 Sick Leave. Gu Qingrui took the X-ray film and glanced at it. "Oh, I really hurt my bones. Fortunately, it's only a slight fracture. It'll be fine after a good rest. I think you should rest at home for a few days. You can go to the clinic when you're almost fully recovered," Zhouing advised after letting out a sigh of relief. "That's true. The clinic isn't busy now, so I'll rest at home for a few days. Alright, I'll just give you a simple massage. After I'm done, you can lie down and rest." After Zhouing finished speaking, she went to the bathroom with him. She filled half a basin with warm water and helped him wipe his back. After she helped him wipe his body, she cleaned his wound with iodophor, applied some safflower oil, and finally wrapped it twice with gauze to prevent the medicinal oil from getting on the bed. After she was done, she helped him put on a vest and said, "Alright, you can rest. I'll be busy for a while." Gu Qingrui did not insist this time because he realized that the injury on his back was getting more and more painful, even standing was getting a little tricky. He had no choice but to drink a spoonful of sleeping-inducing powder to help him sleep. After Zhouing finished her work, she fed the animals in her grassland and then went to the mountains to work. She also prepared 100 pounds of black flour, 500 shiitake mushrooms stuffed buns with black fungus and chicken, 500 mutton and radish stuffed buns, and approximately 300 beef stuffed buns. After she was done, she used her mental power to take a black fish out of the river. She boiled a pot of fish soup in a clay pot and stored it in the warehouse. After that, she left her interspace and went to sleep. The two had black fish soup and chicken stuffed buns for breakfast the following day. After eating, Zhouing drove the carriage to the clinic with Gu Qingxi and informed them that Gu Qingrui was taking sick leave. After coming out, she went to her restaurant to ensure that her workers were fine, then drove the carriage back. She didn't expect to see Gu Qingxi swaying his feet as he sat in the carriage when she walked out of the back door. She was stunned for a moment and went forward to ask, "Why are you here? Isn't the clinic busy?" "I'm on leave. Since Qingrui is injured, I want to go back and learn from him. I can also help you out." Gu Qingxi raised his head and replied. Zhouing paused for a moment. "That's fine too. It's not safe on the road now. You're just a child, so it wouldn't be safe for you to go back and forth. I'm already 12, not a child anymore. A half-grown child, okay?" Zhouing didn't allow him to refute and drove the carriage home. On the way, he found that many people in town were driving or pushing all kinds of carts to Shangha village to get water. She also saw a type of cart, but it wasn't really a cart in the traditional sense. It only had 2 wheels and a rack holding them together. On top of the rack, using the principle of balance, there was a wooden pillar as thick as a person's thigh. In front of the fulcrum were some ropes tied to it, which could be used to tie about 10 water buckets. The other end needed to be controlled by someone to move the cart forward. Except for being slightly slower, it was as efficient as an ox cart. Sister-in-law, do you know what kind of cart that is? Gu Qingxi asked curiously. I don't know, but it looks pretty good. The inventor is quite smart. Zhou Ying shook her head. Can we make one too? That way, we won't have to water the land manually daily. You'll have to ask a carpenter. I'll go back and tell my father. Maybe it'll work. She didn't expect they would have built the same cart in the village the next day, which was much more exquisite than the one she had seen before. It also made the men in the village who carried water to the crops every day feel more at ease. Of course, after Gu Qingxi spread the word around, the villagers also knew about Gu Shengruo's injury. Chapter 270 Incoming Wolves 1. Therefore, each family brought some gifts to visit Gu Qingrue. Some gave eggs, some gave black noodles, some gave dried vegetables and cured meat. Even the patriarch, the village chief, and the Tian and Wang families had sent a hen that laid eggs. Zhou Ying accepted them all without any hesitation. Of course, she also returned the goodwill they received, giving each visiting family mung bean cakes and small snacks. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. Gu Shengruo's injuries were finally almost healed. During these 7 days, Gu Qingxi studied while accompanying Gu Qingrue. Zhou Ying was relieved to see this. So, in addition to making lunch at noon, she spent the rest of her time making clothes and quilt covers. She even learned to make shoes from Sister Tian. Although life in the village was still tiring, it gradually stabilized. On this night, everyone was sleeping soundly when suddenly, a wave of rapid gongs and drums sounded, waking everyone up from their jerkams. The wolves are coming down the mountain. Someone shouted. The wolves are coming down the mountain. All the men, wake up to defend against the wolves. This shout immediately woke everyone up. Since most of them were scared, the village was filled with crying and shouting. At the same time, Gu Qingrue also heard the shouts. He got up, put on his clothes, and said to Zhou Ying, I'll go out and look at the situation. When I get out, lock the door. Don't open the door unless I call you. No, you haven't fully recovered from your injuries. I'll go with you. Zhou Ying shook her head. Gu Qingrue hesitated for a moment and thought of her interspace. He finally nodded and said, Don't do anything stupid later. You must follow me closely, and if something goes wrong, quickly enter your interspace. By the way, get me a crossbow and 10 arrows. You be careful too. Don't get too close if you have nothing to do. After Zhou Ying reminded him, she took out the things for him and took out a large bag of tear-inducing powder, 2 bags of knockout powder, and a slingshot made of cow tendon. Seeing this, Gu Qingrue was worried and gave her a few more instructions. The couple then went out together. At that time, the outside was already brightly lit, and the streets were full of people with torches, most of them rushing to the foot of the mountain. The two of them looked at each other and immediately followed. When they arrived, they found that the men and the wolves were facing each other across a trench, with more than 10 dying wolves in the trench. At the same time, the smell of chili was so strong that they all sneezed. The wolves were obviously not feeling well either. The alpha, in particular, stood restlessly on the mountainside. It was undecided on whether to attack or not. The patriarch saw Zhou Ying and laughed. Zhou Ying, what kind of powder is this? It's more effective than fire. It's acting as if it were the wolves' nemesis. Indeed. I'm afraid our river village would be finished tonight if we didn't have this thing. Qian Shisan chimed in. It's great that it's effective. But there are quite a few wolves, so I don't know how long it can last. Zhou Ying looked at the bright, green eyes everywhere on the mountain and replied with her scalp tingling. After Qian Shisan heard this, he immediately said worriedly, Tvi taken a rough look just now. There are at least 60 to 70 of them. I can only hope that they retreat as soon as possible. Wolves are patient. I'm afraid they won't leave so easily, Gu Qingrui said. After that, he handed the tear-inducing powder to Uncle Qianshi-san and said, "Divide them into small bags and throw them at the area with more wolves and test the effect." Thanks. After Qianshi-san smelled it, he immediately took it with a smile and distributed it to everyone. After separating and wrapping them up, he found a few strong men and threw them to the opposite side of the trench, also throwing up some trees. Chapter 271 Incoming Wolves. 2. The wolf pack became restless a moment later, and each wolf was howling miserably. Some even began to escape up the mountain, ignoring the alpha's orders. This time, the crowd could clearly see the number of wolves. Someone immediately cursed, "Damn it, including the ones in the trap, there are at least 100 wolves. This is a big wolf pack. Indeed, it seems like we really have to be careful." When everyone thought the wolves had retreated, the alpha wolf raised its head and howled. Although they did not know what it meant, the retreating wolves suddenly stopped and retreated to the vicinity of the Mother God Temple to rest and reorganize. "Oh no, they're going to be here for an extended time," the patriarch cried out in alarm. The alpha wolf was also cursing internally. 2 days ago, when it attacked the sheep farm, it encountered that thing that choked its wolf. Today, it encountered it again, such unlucky timing. However, it was impossible for them to retreat. The wolves under its command had not eaten properly for several days. If delayed any longer, they were likely to kill each other. For the sake of the alpha wolf's prestige and the stability of the wolf pack, they had to attack today. At least there were no bows and arrows here, so the wolves could wait for the smell to dissipate before attacking again. Thinking of this, the alpha quickly strode around the forest and decided on an attack plan. After about half an hour, Gu Qingrui saw that the wolves had no intention of retreating and immediately said, "Whoever has a bow and arrow, go home and take it. Also, bring oil or any strong wine you have. By the way, uncle, is there any waste oil in the oil mill?" Gu Qingrui asked. No, the bitter part of the oil was shared with the others. The patriarch shook his head. Oil was always a necessity, not to mention during a drought, even fried pancake residue could not be found these days. One person from each family, he continued. Bring something that can be quickly ignited from your home. Let's fight the wolves together. After he finished speaking, he looked at Zhou. "Zhou, go and prepare some more chili powder." "All right," Zhou responded and told Gu Qingrui of her task. She then turned around and walked home. When she got home, she took out a bag weighing about 10 pounds from her interspace and a jar of 140 proof sorghum wine. When she returned, there was a lot of firewood, wheat straw, and rotten branches on the ground along the trench. She gave the tear-inducing powder to Qianshi-san and handed the alcohol to the patriarch, saying, "Uncle, this is high-proof alcohol, and it will catch fire quickly. All right, leave the rest to me. You step back." The patriarch replied, then scattered the alcohol on the firewood bit by bit. The rest of the alcohol was made into torches. In the end, Gu Qingrui took out a packet of knockout powder and scattered it on the firewood. These knockout powders should be able to repel some of the wolves. Let's retreat a little. All right, everyone, retreat to the village. After the patriarch finished ordering, they retreated a mile into the village. The alpha wolf on the opposite side saw their actions and smelled the alcohol, becoming increasingly anxious. It knew that everything they had set up was to deal with them, but it didn't know what they were doing. As for flammables like alcohol, they could smell them but didn't know what they were. After that, it raised its head and howled a few times. The green eyes moved quickly and then spread out to surround the village. In the river, there were the most wolves. There was no water in the river, so they quickly went down the mountain along the river. On the contrary, very few wolves attacked from the front, but the alpha wolf led the pack. "Oh no, we miscalculated. This alpha wolf is too cunning," the patriarch said. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."